Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of OpenShift Scalable Multiplayer Game Design. For those who don't remember, I'm Erik Jacobs. I'm the host, I think, sometimes, usually. And joining us today, as usual, Roderick Kieley. I'm going to do this every episode. Kieley. Yep. Roddy Kieley.
Close.
And
All
Luke,
good.
actually, Derry.
Derry.
And Luke Derry. Luke does a lot of Blender and 3D stuff over here. Oh man, you've got like things flying around in your background.
Oh yeah,
Like animated background.
Cool. See, there you go, animation, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. So last time we were here, we were chasing down some super weird and obscure low-level Godot errors that we think have to do with the way that messages were coming in from AMQP. And let me, I guess, I don't have that. It's in a different browser. What do I want to do? I wanted to show the slide deck that had the messaging diagram, whatever, but instead I'll just hack together a real fast, terrible one. So let's see here. Share my screen. Share screen. Oh gosh, entire screen. Build. Nope. This one. Yeah, here. Share. Right. Yes, please. Hide. Okay, you see it. There we go. Okay. Isn't there like some cool like way to automatically start a new slide presentation, like with a Chrome shortcut? I just learned about that the other day, but whatever. Anyway. So wow, Control A, not the right tool for the job. So for those who don't remember, we've got, oh gosh, come on, you can do it. So we've got game client, and then we've got the, really? That is super annoying. Broker, which talks AMQP. I'm not going to bother fixing that stuff. Server. Client. Okay. Arrow, nope. Elbow, sure. So, oh, wow. It's really painful to like do this on the fly with people watching. So we've got the clients talk to the message broker and the server talks to the message broker. And this is how everything gets exchanged in terms of the communication between the clients and the servers. We use protobuf, which is the ugoogly thing for making binary packed messages, if you will, with a predictable structure. And then we use a bunch of different libraries to do all of that. But if we look down into the guts of the client, let's see, that is the right thing. We had this server connection library, which would receive, for example, game events, and then it would look at the game event type field and do all this stuff. But one of the things we were doing is, here you see this in Q. This is a recent change from 2 weeks ago. We were like directly receiving a message, which was happening asynchronously, and then like spawning or despawning nodes in Godot, and it would get very angry about things having disappeared synchronously or asynchronously. So what I ended up implementing was a bunch of Q objects. We're using C# here and not GDScript because there was already a C# library for talking via AMQP. Although I just realized that we probably could have used GDScript for everything else and only used the C# for for the whatever. But hey, look, it's a learning opportunity, right? So anyway, so we have all these queue objects, and what we do is when we receive a message, we will put that particular protobuf blob onto a queue, and then in the Godot loop, we will process all of those different queues. And unsurprisingly, when we do that, we basically pop off the queue and then do whatever we would have done anyway. So in this case, when we're processing player creations, we create a ship based on the UUID that came in with the message. You've seen, if you've watched this show a few times before, you've seen a bunch of this. So if I go to the definition of create ship for UUID, we check to see if the ship already exists, because sometimes we get messages for things that are already there. And then very typically, we create a new node instance object for the ship, and then we set a bunch of default settings that's new from last time. And then we add that child node into the scene tree, and blah, blah, blah. So what that did for us is we were getting these like crazy weird error messages about like, this is not a thing. And it's like, what even is this? But anyway, those appear to be fixed. Both Roderick and I have done some scale testing, and we didn't see those error messages again. I'm trying to think of what other big changes there have been. I guess we could go to the repo, SRT Godot client. I think I have that already open somewhere. Here we go, SRT Godot client. And if we look at the commits, what interesting stuff has been added recently? Announcing. So I mentioned the defaults that I talked about over here: player default thrust, player default speed, etc. So if you think about a lot of multiplayer type games, ultimately in this game, we're thinking about maybe having like power-ups, right? You fly around your spaceship, you can collect a power-up, which modifies your statistics, how fast you turn, how fast you go, whatever. But like, where do you start? And how do you know what the starting values are? So what we did was SRT proto buff. A couple of weeks ago, in the security message, I think we talked about this last time, Roderick. We have this announce message, and when the client sends an announce message, all it's doing is it's saying, "Hi, I exist. I'm here." And the server responds with its own announce message to that client, and it says, here are all the default settings for playing a game with me today. You should use these. If we look at the client code, so here's where the announce message is sent. So this is basically, we send the announce message as soon as we connect to the messaging system. Send security announce message, and then we get back when a security message comes in. If it is an announce type message, we process that. Oh, you know what? I just realized this isn't on the queue. I think it's fine because we're not modifying nodes here, but who knows? Anyway, so what does this process announce do? It just slurps all the values off of the message and sets the defaults in the game. And then, as you just saw before, when we process player create, when we create a ship, we set that particular instance's values to the defaults. So this is a convenient way for the client to basically initialize itself to know what the starting value should be. Again, how fast a ship could go, how many hit points it starts with, et cetera, et cetera. So that was announced. Let's see. logging, queuing, we talked about. Hit point ring as a shader. So that was another interesting thing. Let's pull up the editor here and pull up the scene. So Luke has an implementation that we're going to play with today, possibly of animation stuff. But I found like a hacky thing online on one of the Godot help dudes. I forget which one it was. I have a link somewhere in the code. But this is a sprite which actually uses a shader. And in Godot, shaders are basically using kind of like OpenGL-ish language. And we can look at the shader code, which is in sets. Where is it? Ship shaders. So this particular shader is just basically drawing a circle based on how big, on the fill ratio. And in the code, it's actually in the player's code, playership. When we process, right? So process happens on every frame. We check if the missile's ready to be reloaded, and then we update the hit point ring. And so if we look at the update hit point ring, all we're doing is setting the shader parameter for the setting the ratio, which is just dividing the current number of hit points by the player default hit points. Now, at some point in the future, this is going to have to change if we implement power-ups, because they may end up with more hit points or whatever. But for now, this functions. So what do I want to do here? I'm going to play the game real quick by myself, just to show some of those things. So let's join. This is the debug server UI that you've seen probably before. We'll join a server player, and then I will come over here to the client, and I will run it, and hopefully my laptop won't explode. And because I have a headset on, the audio is playing in my headset. So can you hear the audio?
No.
No, it's too bad. We're definitely missing out.
I can change the. Okay, you know what? Let me do that. So here, if I go settings and then I go, oh boy, this is really loud. Okay, it's not as loud. Can you hear it now?
Yeah, I think I hear the music.
You do hear the music? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll join a client, and then the radar shows me. I don't know if you can see the radar over here. The radar has this little teeny tiny blip.
Yep.
And so if I fly up there, there's the ship. And then if I fire, we have terrible sound effects. I don't know if you can hear those.
Just barely. You can't make out the detail from the sound, which is too bad.
Anyway, we'll share the link to the game. But you can see that the hit point ring goes down as the player gets hit. And then they blow up and they disappear. Yay, hit point ring. Okay, cool. So that was showing our use of a shader. Let me see where was that shader that I used. Hit point shader. Godot. Shader. See if I can find it so that people know where it was. Changing shader. It was like GD. Here we go. So I can't remember which one of these I started with. Yeah. So circular life bar, which is very cute, but then there's like a link in there to something else, which then took me to this one, maybe radial progress bar. Radial progress shader, and then ultimately like to this like simplest of circular. Nope, I just went in a circle. Health circle. That's the one. Yeah, health circle. So this is the shader. Godot shaders. Apparently, it's a website dedicated just to Godot shaders, and this is the health circle. So that's cool. What other crazy stuff did I do? So that background image that you were seeing, unfortunately, that's not a Creative Commons one, so we'll have to pull that out. There was an issue with the radar where like I was changing who the game thought was its player, and so the radar would just like stop working if you weren't the first player. Fix some stuff with config, and then I added this game over screen and sequence, which is really actually probably terrible code, but we'll walk through it. So there's two things that can happen. One, you run out of hit points, or two, for some reason, let's say like the server decides it's going to kick you off. Oh, I should totally turn this off. And I don't think any of you guys have seen this yet. So I made this game over screen, which unsurprisingly is pretty simple. Just game over, centered with a button. I'm going to change my audio back to my headset because I can't hear you guys. That's it. Okay. So game over button. Hey, great. And then if we look at the game itself, so what happens? A destroy message comes, whether because the server decided you ran out of hit points and you blew up, or because it wanted to punch you. So that would result in a destroy message being put on the queue. We would then destroy your ship. We know how many hit points you had at the time that the message was sent because I added that to the protobufs the other day, and then we know which player we're talking about, or which player. So first thing we do, we check: do we actually know about this player? Is in the array of players that we've decided, do we even know that this player exists? And I just had a thought. So we're using this dictionary instead of actually using Godot. This could be considered either duplicative or dumb, depending on how we want to look at it. Because we could have just easily done like iterate over all the nodes, or does like, is there a node with this, whatever. So maybe we need to look at that in the future. But anyway, so do we know about the player? If we do know about the player, check their hit points. If the hit points is less than 0, that means that this ship exploded, and we should play the explode sound. Now, this is also probably a bad way to do it, but it does ensure that the whole sound plays. And so if we go to the player ship, we have this signal. So if you remember, if you know anything about Godot, signals can be tied between things to make stuff happen. So when that sound finishes, that's when we finally expire the player object, and all expire player does is it frees the queue of the whole node. The reason we do a get parent here is because the code is actually not attached to the root node of the player. It's attached to a different part, which we could probably change, but it's a legacy weird thing. But anyway, it's fine. So that's how we handle destroying the ship, right? So in this case, the queue is freed, and we played a sound. If the hit points is not less than or equal to 0, we don't play the sound, and then we keep falling through the code. If we're removing ourselves, we should set in-game to false. Now, why do we set in-game to false? Well, because in the process of the game, where we loop every single time, if you're not in the game, well, we don't care about your input anymore. So we'll stop sending messages related to your input. And we won't update the game's UI. So we'll stop processing the radar and doing other things. This also has the side benefit of eliminating a race condition where, on the radar specifically, because the update game radar, and again, this is probably where using this dictionary is killing us or hurting us. Because update game radar iterates over these objects, but you can get into this race condition where you start iterating over the objects, but you've actually removed the object. And so at the time you get to it in this loop, it's actually not even there anymore. Or so I should say, it's not that the object isn't there anymore, because the dictionary is the dictionary, but like the node that you're referring to is gone or something like that. So it caused some weird problems. But anyway, going back to the destroy. So we set in-game to false. Come on. Then we expire player, which removes the node, if you remember from that expire player we just looked at 2 seconds ago. And then we display the game over screen. Obviously, if the thing being removed is not our player, we don't need to display the game over screen. Display game over screen, pretty trivial. Hide the game user interface, so like the radar and all the other things, we just hide that whole node, which is a bunch of control objects. And then we add as a child of the root, or which is the game over screen, which I showed you before. And so one cheesy, quick way to show how this works is to run the game and then just kill or delete the player that joined from the debug server. So here I have the game client, and here's the debug server. So you can see there's no players right now. I will join the game, and now we have this player. And then if I delete them, we see that we've switched to the game over screen. And if I look at the logs, why are there no logs? It's weird. Why are the logs showing up there? No idea. Anyway, apparently that's not even an information level log. So
Could be a bug.
if I hit the try again button, I'm gonna kill the code because the music is really loud. I don't know why the logs went to that terminal and not somewhere else. Anyway, let's look at the code for the game over screen. If we look at the game over screen code, what we see is very simple. The ready is fired when the node enters. So all we do is initialize the logger and find the root node for the game itself, and then find where the GUI is. When the button pops up, so after they click it, we check to see if joining the game works, which right now only returns true. We already have the player's ID because when they first fired up the client, they typed in an ID. So we just rejoin the game as the same exact player ID. If that was successful, which right now it always will be, sorry, if it's not successful, show some kind of error or do something. Otherwise, queue free, but we're in the game over screen. So this removes the game over screen from the scene tree and then re-show the GUI. So we reinitialize the game UI. If we look at the initialize the game UI function, what does this do? It sets in-game equals true, which seems logical, loads a bunch of textures, shows the game user interface, and then shows like the speedometer and the missiles and all the other stuff. So pretty easy. I will run this again. Oh, I know why I did that. Because I have it as play in editor, I need to launch, which will show me the debug or the logs here. And I probably should set this to debug, but it's fine. I'm gonna blow myself up with the music again in my headset, you can't hear. It's still building. Still building, and there we go. Okay. So I'm going to join the game, client 1. I'm going to remove myself from the game, and then I will try again, which joins me right back into the game, and here we are. And then if I finally quit, like with the quit button, then I send a quit message, which sends a destroy, but at that point the client's already gone, so it doesn't care. Cool. Okay, that's all the changes I've made so far. Luke, do you want to show your animations?
Yeah, sure. I don't. Do you want to see the Blender side of it too, or
Oh yeah, that'd be super rad.
does that
I'm
matter?
gonna stop sharing my screen. I think people would like to see that for sure.
And you're running the new Blender now too, right?
Yeah,
Blender 3?
I always kind of run beta or
Beta all the things.
yeah, in Blender at least. Let me shrink.
Where are
it
they
down.
to now with regards to the 3 release?
Well, let's see. I'm on 3.4. Actually, I think that might be the. Let's see what they got. Latest is. Oh, this is the latest. This is 3. This is latest stable. So, who knew? I'm on this. All right. Let's see here.
And the Godot there was 3.5.1 stable, I believe, with mono.
Yes, we're using 3.5.1. Godot 4 beta is out. It does work with mono at this point. Luke has done a little bit of exploration into kind of upgrading, but we're not in a rush.
But it sounds like from there's a video that I saw yesterday that somebody had posted, Ricardo, I believe, who worked on the Podscape game. He showed that he had this video, and it showed somebody who went through and took their project and basically ported it from Godot 3 to Godot 4, and it was a C# project. And like for 25 minutes, he went down the list. I had to do this, and I had to do this, and I had 1,600 errors there, and 500 errors there. So I think we should migrate sooner rather than later, so that we don't get to the point where we have thousands of errors, right?
I don't think we're gonna have that many problems because we're doing a 2D game.
His was 2D.
Oh, really?
His was just like a roguelike, like 2D tile-based thing. But there were so many little things that changed.
No, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
But his project was much, much larger.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not using a tile set, so I think that also helps. Yeah, the migration. So I for those that don't know me that are watching the stream, I helped in previous years with some of the big Red Hat Summit demos that we had that were games that people played with that were showcasing our technologies, and so a few of those were written in Godot, and so I went through and kind of updated some of them, and there's a nice migration process that they have, but it's not. It had a few different things that were lacking because the language, the GD script changed syntax or variable names or whatever it might be, class names. Anyway, so this is the Blender for the ship. And if you're not familiar with Blender, Blender is a full-featured 3D studio. And so what I did, the original animations that I had included, let's see, that's not the right one. Thrusters. Let's see that.
So what are you showing us right now?
What you see on the right, I was going to put the ship back in. I know why. Okay. There it is.
So this is the Blender file, Blender program showing the 3D model for the spaceship that we are rendering out as a 2D image as a sprite.
Yeah. So I used Blender to make it's a 3D model, and so then what I did is for the various states of the ship, I put in animations that would rotate it. It's very in Blender. It's very simple. Animations is just rotating on an axis for the most part. And then yesterday added some of these thruster little bits, and so you can kind of see
cool.
If I zoom out, we're operating at small, so you hardly see any of it. But
it's voxel-ish.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, and if I don't do rendered mode, if I just do material preview, you can kind of see what it does. So it goes through each one, and then essentially what it's outputting is a PNG file with that transparent thing on it. And then what we'll do is, I can show, let's see here. I'll switch to what the GIMP version looks like. So I take the PNGs that are rendered out and then put them into somewhere. I have this open.
So this is you're effectively rendering rendering an animation of a 3D thing into a 2D pile of PNGs that you're then going to turn into a sprite map or a timeline.
Yeah, and we did this same technique in some of the Summit demos where it just made sense to have like a 3D rendered object that then has 2D representation. It makes it a little less, like you don't have to do a 3D game at that point, but you get the cool
right. Yeah, and if you had done like an isometric style, it would look way more 3D even.
Yeah, and that, I mean,
and you can still animate all the things as they're doing stuff, but it's still actually just 2D.
Yeah, so like this is the GIMP rendering of that sprite sheet.
Sorry, you hold on.
Oh yeah, I had to stop sharing. Sorry.
I had to turn it back on.
So this is what it looks like, in place. So these are the different movements of the ship itself, and you will see.
Can you switch to one of the other animations, because it's almost hard to tell in this one what the differences are.
Yeah. So like.
Well, I guess if you hover over the top left with your mouse. So the top left one is like the base image.
Yeah, and maybe it'll help. Let me add a white background here because that'll help a little bit.
Yeah. So the top left one is like the starting neutral position.
Yeah, that's like the default. Like if you aren't pressing any keys,
right,
you're sitting in that. And then
like that bottom right one is braking.
This is what is it? Yeah, that bottom right would be braking. So it's by row.
So you can kind of see more of the butt of the ship because it's like tilting forward.
Left turn. Acceleration and deceleration essentially was how it worked. And so then because I have the separate thrust now, we did the same thing. This one's even harder to tell what it is, but
oh geez, yeah.
It's essentially mapping to that.
Got it.
And then when you add the thrust, the nice thing is the two overlap just perfectly, even though they're 3D shapes. You do like a masking essentially of the two, and so it looks like they're one thing as they go. And
why did you choose to separate them?
So I did it originally with I
can think of ideas, like reasons why, but I'm curious what your reasons are.
So the reason was when I was trying to do the logic behind how to animate the different things. Because the state of change was variable across the two. So like I could be accelerating and going straight. I could be turning and accelerating and all so the variations of that, I was like,
there were different combinations of, yeah.
It was really separate things because the ship's position mattered more, like as far as like if I'm turning, I want to be able to show I'm turning. If I'm thrusting while turning, it's really connected to what the ship is doing, not the thrusters, right? And so by separating them out, actually in Godot, I was able to, and we can see this, there's what's called an animation player. And so you can actually do like a layer on that. And so I could add the thrust as part of the animation and then say, all right, check the thrust. If I'm thrusting, go ahead and show the thrust. If I'm not, hide it, but still show what you're doing with the ship. And so it actually made it a really easy way to do like the combinations, because I have all of the combinations together that I can mesh together. It did. The one thing that it doesn't do right now is like what I had before was it had like a progression of the thrust. So it was like pushing it out, it's like, oh, I'm getting more thrust.
Oh, it's just on or off right now.
It's on off, but like as you'll see, it's tiny, so it doesn't really make it. Like I was like, no one's really going to notice. It's not. it's not like horrible when it
Yeah.
does that.
Yeah, you can always enhance it later too, right? You can stretch
and
it
to me-
out, or you can assign, you should put a shader to it, or there's lots of different things you could do later.
Yeah, so the
if
nice
it's
thing
separate.
is, because it's separate, I could then go through and say, all right, I'm going to animate, like for every position that the ship is in, I could animate a separate sprite sheet with the thrusters at every position and like multiply it out, so that then, all right, take the position of the ship and the thrust, and then, you know, whatever, like, you know, it's different levers for the two things.
Yeah, you can work all the combinations if you need.
Yeah, and you can see where, like, yes, it's cool that we're doing a 2D game, but you're trading, like, yes, there's no complexity of 3D, but we've traded it for like
You
this
still
complex
have
matrix
detail.
of sprite stuff.
Yeah, and like honestly, like I feel like this actually, like with the complexity in 3D would be you have to you know, the person modeling it has to come up with the poses. So like a run animation is this, you know, but that's, you only do that like for simplicity. You don't do, all right, I'm running and turning at the same time, so what do you do then? And Godot actually does that for you a lot of times, where it's like it'll transition between the two. I need to figure that out. I haven't gotten that complex yet. But
In 3D or in 2D?
you can do both. I think there's mechanisms in the animation player to be able to like smooth the abrupt edges between animations.
Interpolate between one to the other, right?
Yeah.
There's a way to do it nice and smooth, given two sets of frames for message.
So can you show us the ship flying around?
Yeah, let's see here. I'm gonna stop sharing and share again. It's just
too many desktop.
I'll start up the game too. I turned off the audio, so I won't. Well, I guess I could. I'll turn it back on so everyone can hear it.
Yeah. You gotta hear my amazing sound effects.
All right. Hopefully, it won't be too blasting. All right. Can you hear it?
I definitely hear it. I don't see it, but I hear it.
Yeah, hold on. Okay. All right. I've been using Flight Risk as a.
Yeah, and for other people who are paying close attention, you'll notice that his ring is green because he's made some changes to the way the
we can talk about that too. All right,
your UUID is not showing correctly on your player.
It's very dim.
Oh, I see it. You added something at the bottom underneath it.
Oh yeah. So I put, that's like a debug thing for myself.
Okay, you're good.
So you can kind of see the animations.
Oh, that looks cool. Yeah. Oh, that looks way better.
Yeah, there's an extra little level of life to it, right?
And then here's deceleration. Now it's doing this repeated thing, and I need to figure that out. But yeah, so that's I'll stop it so the audio doesn't get annoying. But
no, it's awesome. It's starting to look like a real game.
Yeah. So that, like with the thrust adds like that little bit of like, yeah, I'm accelerating.
A little bit of
and
life.
I did it in the logic where, right now, so the assessment it's doing is it's like, all right, am I rotating, like turning, and that, like right now we're basing like the animations are based off of server responses and the current state of the ship. And so I think theoretically, if we had multiple players, those things would all kind of do what they need to, I think, at this point, other than the buggy, like, repeat the animation thing.
I mean, we can find out if you want to share your screen and play against the server, and we can all, Roddy and I can both join.
Let's see. Will that load? If I do it, If I play against,
you share your screen.
Do it on my screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to change your server.
All right.
To AMQP1.
Which, let me find that file again.
I'm still running the debug server, which is fine. I guess I could run a debug client too. Okay, I've got it set for AMQP1. Oh, and my server's set for AMQP1. Yeah, okay, I'm already good to go. Have you pulled in my game over screen code, Luke?
That's a good question. I just did enough. When did you push it?
Yesterday.
Yeah, I just pulled in the
Okay,
latest.
cool. So yeah, that way we'll be able to quickly rejoin.
Where is that config now?
Where's what config? Are you building the client when you run it?
Yeah.
So in your file tree, it's going to be resources client.cfg. Or you could just share your screen, or both.
Well, yeah. So my problem is, well, we'll see. I can do this. Let's see. All right. Let's see if I can share the entire screen.
You can. The question is,
Well,
which screen?
I live out in the boonies, and so.
No, you're good. So in your VS Code, in the resources folder is client.cfg.
Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and so just make sure it's amqp1.srtgame.com. And so when you build that, it should connect to the server. Man, your sound is really loud.
Is it the mic? Yeah, here I can turn it down.
Okay,
The
Roddy's
mic
already joined.
Yeah,
is
I'm
coming from like
see.
my camera, and it's not a very directional mic.
Yeah, we need to
Yeah,
add
so
some
one
volume control, I think.
one challenge we might have is that I got to keep the game server foregrounded ever so slightly, otherwise the FPS is going to drop to like negatory, and that affects like the messages being sent.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
But I think it's
Oh,
good.
yeah. Yeah,
Nice,
yours
guys.
is turning too.
Hold on, let me get near you. Don't kill each other quite yet.
Oh, oh. Oh yeah, look
Oh
at
no!
that. Oh, I missed. Oh no. The one bad thing about control on Mac is it switches your windows. Your workspaces.
I don't know if you guys can hear the pew pew sounds.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can
what just
hear it.
happened?
I
Oh,
think
I crashed big time.
no.
Oh, we
Did
crashed it.
What'd we crash? I think we crashed the server. Oh, we crashed the server.
Oh.
Yeah, the server crashed.
Oh,
So
I died.
yeah, so there's something that happens where a player gets removed from the game, and then
It gets referenced.
yeah, but it's referencing the player UUID in AMQP for some reason, and
Yeah.
we never figured that one out. But I
Yeah,
actually couldn't see what was happening, so I don't like. Was everybody's ship moving animated?
Yeah,
somewhat?
everybody was moving, and I got shot and killed.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the animations were still going. So
Cool. Yeah,
Makes
it doesn't always. So hang on, just one thing to note: we just did a play test with 3 players.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
right.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
The game is hard as poop because the ship controls are very clumsy, which is like you would think that it would be like maddeningly frustrating, but it's actually very like strategy inducing because you're like, oh, I have to like slow down, but slowing down is
Yeah, you have to
slow
be careful.
and speeding up is slow. So like I got to slow down while I turn to like point in the right, and then the missile's slow, and so it's actually like kind of fun.
There's a bit of planning involved.
Yeah.
Anyway, so sidetracked from that. Yeah, what were we talking about?
The server crash, and we got this.
Yeah. I don't know
unreferenced
how.
player.
Yeah,
and we've seen a similar thing before. And when we saw it before, I think that was part of what got us on the track of the sync versus async.
Maybe
and the callables.
let me share my screen again. Share my screen, entire screen, HP. Yes, this one. Share the screen. Share. Okay. Whoa. Hey now. infinite screens. So here's the error. It's this like the given key Roderick Kieley, but it's coming from the AMQP library, which is in like I don't understand how this even knows about the player, but whatever. So if I go to the server code,
there's something not right in the way that IDs are being tracked throughout the system.
So let me look back here at the. So here's the debug string of messages, right? So the way we do this is with collision shapes and bodies. So the missile enters a body and it determines that there was a hit. Then the missile gets removed from play because it hit something. Then in the player ship stuff, because the signal for hit got connected, we take damage, which was set for 25. Righty, the player's hit points hit 0. Okay, the hit points are 0 to remove the player, and cue the player for removal. So I'm using cue again, sync, removing the player, and then that's when this explosion happens.
It's still referenced somewhere.
Yeah, and so the question is like, where or when? So if we look at the server,
did I see? Did it reference it twice?
No.
Oh, there's 2 unhandled exception dumps.
Because that would lead
true.
me to believe it's the 2 clients that are left referencing it, and it doesn't exist at that point.
But they don't ever talk about it. The clients don't talk about
the other
Roddy ever. They only just dumb receive stuff.
Well,
and this is in the sender link.
But it would make sense that it's in the client update though if it's 2 because of the 2 clients.
Well, here, I mean, it's happening in send game updates. Right? So if we look at so here's where we that's not the right remove player. Here's the in send sorry. No sec. Okay, remove player. So removing the player to remove, create the game event where we remove the player. We take the player out of the scene tree on the server side. We remove them from the objects array. We remove their object from by their key, and then we send the game event for removing the player. So send game event. If we go to son of a biscuit, send game event, we are just sending a blanket game event, right? Nothing in particular. And then the explosion was during send game updates. Yeah. So here's where I think we're getting burned, right? This is that dictionary. So right. I wonder if this happens so fast, like there's some kind of race condition happening here where we remove them from the dictionary and we send the game. Like, are these 2 things? I don't know enough about C# to know. I wonder if these are happening in separate threads or something.
Well, to me, it seems like what it's doing is it firing the remove player on our client to try to like is that logic firing on our client as well as Roddy's?
Your clients I don't think have anything to do with these exceptions or explosions.
Okay.
No, although my client did crash, but I think that's independent of this mishap.
Yeah, we'll look at your error later. So in the server's process, which happens, theoretically even more often than every frame. No, that's physics process. This is I think synced with frame. When we send the game update, when we send the game event on the sender link, throw if detach it. Like this is I don't understand enough about what's going on to understand how this error could be thrown, or which dictionary it's referring to, because it's the dictionary is coming from the AMQP exception, whatever. So does it know about? Is it that it knows about a client or something? Like this is like low level. We probably need the guy who wrote the AMQP library to help us with this one.
Yeah, it's. I just started up the client and I can hear nothing but the music. Let me see if I can turn.
Yeah, I'm gonna come up with a. Oh, lovely. We got block user on YouTube and to block list, and there we go. Hopefully we got rid of some of those spam messages. Yeah, so again, like we have to talk to some people on that library, because I don't understand.
I would
this is even
assume
being
it's
referenced.
something we're doing. Like it wouldn't know about those references unless we were telling it in some way, right? So it's just a matter of figuring out what our structure is.
If we look at the game event object, the game event has a UUID. Where's the game event? So here's, we create a player game event buffer of type destroy. We look at create player game event buffer. We're setting the UUID, but this is a field buried in the protobuf for serialization. Like, has nothing to do with the dictionary that it's referring to. So the only thing that I can think of, let me switch to the client library here real quick. If we look at server connection, and we look at when we actually connect, right? So during the ready is when we try to connect to, no, it's not, initialize AMQP. So we try to connect to the URL at the address, async, AMQP connection, catch exception, fine. So then we create a bunch of link IDs that have the UUID in them, but they're not just the UUID. They're this like long string of stuff. And so, and then we have this announce message, which is unrelated. If we look at the exception is in sender link, send internal, AMQP, sender link, send game event, right? So if we go back to the server, send game event. Send game event is on the game event out sender, which is a sender link. And so if we look at where we configure that one, that is the wrong button. Where's the find references? I wish there was a way to just go to it. Oh, that does it. Double click, look at that. And then this one also has not that UUID in it. So like, I have no idea how that exception is firing against the given key or what dictionary it's referring to at send game event. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, on that. So I did just do a quick run and put a breakpoint on the remove player and start up a client and quit. And so there is, let's see, I have 5 thread pools open.
Can you share your screen?
And yeah, I probably could. Oh, I turned off my video. That wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Let's try again, settings. Oh, not in there. How do I share my? Oh, I need to go out of full screen. How to sort of share screen. Okay, found the right one. Can I find the right window? That's the next question. I think this is the right one here. Yeah, so I just ran a really quick test. Can you see my window by any chance?
You are sharing something, but I didn't turn it
Okay.
on. Okay.
Yeah, so
I
this
now
is
see a IDE window.
right. So I'm using JetBrains Rider here on Mac, and so is it Control Plus? Nope. Control Shift Plus Plus. No, I was just trying to make the text a little bit bigger. But we can see here down in the left, under the Threads and Variables tab, that we did indeed have like 5 thread pools open, and we have a thread pool worker who got through to the server.remove player, right? And so if we look through back to the genesis of that, like there's like a queue user work item callback, socket async result, and then of course a ton of thread handling and task handling stuff happens. So I'm not sure what the color differentiation is here between purple and white, but I would suspect that this is clearly not on the main thread, right? So it's clear that thread pools are in play and the multiple threads are in play, and we're probably not on the main thread in this case. But what that actually means in practice, or whether that has anything to do with what we're seeing, I think is a completely open question as of yet. Or like you said, what is the linkage there between the AMQP exception and the UUID, which is just my name, right?
Yes.
And so maybe we're mixing up something somewhere in one particular case, but it would be strange maybe because we've seen errors similar to this for quite some time, and there's been quite a bit of churn since then. So I don't know. I think it's just going to require a little bit of debugging
Yeah,
and
I still
stepping
think
through, and
we
then just
gotta
wait for the light to
go.
go on.
I still think we gotta go to the AMQP library people with the exception and be like, your library is throwing this exception. Can you help us find it?
Well, to be fair, the library is open source, right? So we can actually step into the code and take a look to see where the exception is being thrown. It just might require a little bit of extra setup.
Well, it's in
Godot.
throw if detaching, which makes it sound like something is in the process of disconnecting or whatever. If you're
Right. So
sharing your
throw.
screen, but we don't see whatever it is that you're looking up.
So sorry. Yeah, the fine and file. I'll just stop sharing and we can talk. So the detach would be either like the link or the session detach because the client quit, and in my case, I closed the window. So teardown is happening on the AMQP stuff, right?
Well, I
So
don't think the explosion happened when you closed your window. It was as soon as you got destroyed, the explosion happened.
right, but the process is that at some point, it's quite likely that the AMQP stuff is going to be torn down. I don't know if it's exactly when the window is destroyed or before that, but either way, the detach has to do likely with the link. And so, from an AMQP perspective, you've got a connection, and connection is built up of sessions and links. Well,
Yeah.
actually, a link, and then there could be multiple sessions in the link, or it could be the reverse. I can't remember. And so, somewhere there, likely, that's where the throw if detach came from. That detach likely means it could either be the AMQP detach, or it could also potentially be maybe a Godot node got detached. But given that it's an AMQP exception and we're throwing it, I would assume it has to do with detaching something related to AMQP. And that's where I would start looking and digging it.
I didn't fully follow that.
Yeah,
but
it
we
has to do
know
with,
it's in the sender link. So I'm looking in sender link. See, actually, let me share my screen here. Share my screen. Oh, so many tabs and buttons and clicks. Share. Okay, so here's sender link. Throw if detaching. This is the only place it appears. And so again, here's the error. AMQP link throw if detaching. I don't know what this 58 is. It's not line 58. But this, I don't even know what this does. Oh, maybe in there, look at this. Internal void throw if detaching. If is detaching or close called, throw an error. I can only assume that this is what we're seeing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the exact version we're looking at that we have, I think
well,
we
I don't know.
have.
Hang on. Let's see.
Like, I mean,
It's
there
easy
could be
enough to
others
check.
in other versions, right? We
Hang
have
on. Easy
AMQP
enough.
Netlight 243.
243. So if we go here and we hope that they have good tagging.
It would be nice if we had the full library instead
What
of
do you
just the
mean?
package. Or rather,
What
all
do you
the
mean?
code integrated to be able to step into it, right? And then we could just see what the state
I
is
had
at that
tried
point
to
in
set
time.
that up and couldn't make it work.
Quite work, yeah.
At least not with the way that VS Code and Godot were
Working together.
doing whatever. Throw new exception, new error code, illegal state, description, FX format, this dot state. But it didn't. That's not the error that we got though, oddly enough. We got this.
Yeah, that's odd.
This dot error. I don't understand this C# syntax. But it's this dot error, new error code illegal state. But that's not what this error is. So I'm still confused about. It's almost like hold on, throw if detaching string operation. Yeah, I don't even understand because that's not what's happening. Like AMQP link throw if detaching, AMQP link throw if detaching, string operation. So I get it. Okay. I think this is what's happening. AMQP link throw if detaching system string operation, right? So we're supposed to be passing in a string that defines the operation. But I don't think that's what's getting passed in, which is why we're getting an unhandled exception. Does that make sense?
I was just looking that the key not present. To me, that seems like that's more of a client issue.
Again, this is the server sending a message to the broker. The server doesn't know anything about the clients, and the client never has the key that looks like this.
The server is sending something, or the server is referencing something in the player dictionary, and that exception is getting sent on and then unhandled because it doesn't know what to do with the message. It seems like.
Oh, you think it's like passing a reference to the dictionary?
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Why is this showing that I made a change? I didn't change. So let's go back here to server. So
and somehow
the game event is being constructed by the player, but the player is being figured out by finding a node. If we look at,
because like a C# error, if something doesn't exist in the dictionary by like what you're referencing, it will throw that specific error. Like the given key was not present in the dictionary.
But there's no. So in that code path of sending the game event, we're never referring to that dictionary. the dictionary removal object itself, like we're not referencing player objects anywhere in remove player. We came into remove player with a string.
But
So in this case,
so
go ahead.
hear me out. So remove player, that's an event that the player, like
No.
the health of the player would reference that. Would like every client send that back?
No.
Potentially.
No. The
Because I
clients don't.
guess what I'm
The
wondering
clients
is,
don't ever. Again, the clients don't ever send messages on that sender link. They don't know about it.
okay.
They're reading from the broker. Like the client shouldn't have anything to do with this.
Or like I'm trying to, like, essentially to me, like if this came in and the UUID didn't exist and it tried to remove it, then the game event is still gonna, it's like there's nothing to catch an error if the UUID doesn't exist, right?
You're saying if the UUID doesn't exist here?
Yeah, like it would throw an error. Like you could try it. I don't know how you'd try that, but or you could try to catch an error there, and we could try. You could do it. You could do it locally. Like you could add 2 people and then destroy.
Well,
one.
we can just do it this way, the same way we do it with a lot of these. Try get value. Copy that, then go back. So I think what you're saying is, so let's see, in the game, when would we send a leave?
And it seems like it's only like it would only be if someone got destroyed in this case. It seems like, because a quit is not like, it's not something where the other clients care, but where a missile, like there's some interplay between, I need an update about whether my missile hit that. Like I don't know. I'm
Well,
kind of
but
grasping.
the client never sends a destroy. Only the server sends a destroy.
Right. But essentially, like if it's if it has already removed, like
you got to be, hang on. You got to be way more specific. You can't use it.
So if the server already sent a destroy to one client and then needed to send
the server doesn't send destroys to clients. It just sends messages to the broker.
So how do clients know when the other players get destroyed?
The client only knows when players get destroyed when it receives a destroy message about a UUID from the server.
So that means that the server had to destroy it, like had to send it 3 times technically.
No, it only sends it once. It expects all messages will be received by the clients.
Okay.
That's what the broker does in the middle for the multicast address, right? It's basically like a pub sub, like a publish and subscribe mechanism. You publish it once and all the subscribers will get it.
And there's no chance that it would send it more than once, I guess.
Not to an individual
but even
client.
so, if your concern is that it sent it more than once, we can wrap this to say, you know, well, what happens if you try to remove something from a dictionary and it's not there?
I think that's my point, is like the only dictionary we have is the player one, right? Like,
well, there's many dictionaries, but in this case, the only one that might be,
the only one that would have a reference to the player is the player one, though, I guess.
Yeah. Where's the where are the methods on a dictionary? I want to find the methods. The methods. There we go. So remove. Removes a value with the specified key. Returns true, otherwise false. It returns false if the key is not found. So it doesn't throw an exception if the key is not found.
Interesting. Okay. Or are we trying to set something after it's removed? I guess that might. Given key, because I mean,
Are we
to me,
trying to set
the error
something
message seems
after?
like.
To me, the error message makes no sense because the AMQP library is what's throwing the exception.
Yeah, and that's why to me it seems like maybe it's catching an error from like essentially the server is sending that error to essentially as a message.
That doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't understand how that would even be possible. And again, this is why we go back to like, I think we need the AMQP library people, because like, I don't understand how you can think anything other than the AMQP library is what's sending this error. Because it's literally telling you like, in this line of code, you're getting an exception, which is an unhandled exception. I don't know how to interpret this error any other way.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Because what you're saying is that even though we've got 5 deep of callback, that's actually not what's happening. That it's the error somewhere else.
That first exception is the thing that's actually not AMQ. That's my hunch, and maybe I can try to see if I get the same thing. But
What are you saying that first exception?
That
is not
that
AMQ.
Key not present seems like it's the one that's because AMQ doesn't know, like it doesn't know that key out of anything, right?
I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Like in that error message, the given key Roderick Kieley, like AMQ doesn't know that key.
But why is AMQP looking for that key? At no place ever is that key referenced by AMQP.
Right. That's why to me it seems like then the error isn't actually AMQ. It's something AMQ is getting that it's like I have no idea what you're trying to do.
But how would AMQ get an error about this key given
that's
the call path?
Yeah. That I'm not sure.
So I can't hear much here now because I'm playing 3 clients and all the music is overlapping. But it could simply be the way that exceptions are handled, because if there's no try catch and the exception is not caught, it could be that the exception bubbles into the AMQP library where there's a try catch block that handles the exception, and then it extracts the string from the exception inside the AMQP code.
Okay, but I don't even know what to try catch, because the only place that we're potentially getting an exception in this code, because if you look at it, it's here's the removing player and then immediately unhandled exception.
Because looks like that's maybe where it's caught.
Yeah, understood. Here's removing player and then exception. So of these subsequent lines of code, there's this, but given key was not present in the dictionary.
Yeah,
but we
like
already
that.
Hold
the
on.
Error message, I think they're 2 independent events, right? I think the error message, Roderick Kieley not being in the dictionary, is the event, and the AMQP exception is what caught the exception, and it's dumping the string.
I understand, but the question is what is even possibly throwing this exception, given where we were in the code? And
yeah, that's still an open question.
So I mean, if we continue to follow this further, so we've got this remove, then we send the game event, and then if we look at what was calling remove player, it was backwards. Well, here, let's go to process because it all starts there. Really?
Sorry, I turned off the game. The song, just not the. All right, did that crash?
Process player removal. So in the process thing, process player removal, while the count is 0, dequeue the message, and what comes off of that queue, that player remove queue, is just strings of UUIDs. So we do a remove player of strings of UUIDs. So if we come into remove player, here's the remove. So again, it's like I don't know how we can figure out any better what might possibly throw that exception. We got to like keep going further and further backwards, or how do we make C# debug better, or throw exceptions better?
Well, ideally, we would run it to the debugger, put a try-catch block where it occurs, and then
But we
step
don't
back
know where
to
it's
the
occurring.
stacks, right?
That's the whole point. If you're saying that this exception is not happening in here, it's happening somewhere random, I'm saying we have no idea where it's occurring.
Well, if we had the AMQP code, we could put a breakpoint on all AMQP exceptions where they're caught and work backwards, right?
Well, but this is that exactly. This is showing you where.
Send game updates. Right, but we can't actually inspect all the variables and look at the different frames and understand why the values are what they are over multiple runs just by looking at the stack traces provided, right?
If the server was running in debug via VS Code, you wouldn't need breakpoints. It pauses on exceptions.
Okay, I gotta close down some clients. I can't hear anything.
So instead of running the server locally like this, I can run the server in debug here, and if we get an exception, it would pause, and we'd have whatever. So I've got the server running in my in my Godot, in my debugger, basically. There's the that's not what I dot play. Turn off the music. Where is the music? Oh, is that an auto play on the scene?
Yeah, down at the bottom there.
Yeah, definitely turn that off.
Okay, so I mean, if you guys fire up your clients against AMQP1 as the broker, I've got it running, and it's running in debug, or should be, yeah. Are you firing up clients?
I will be in a second. I'm just finishing off with the last crash I had of the client, which was another key not found exception.
It's not connecting to AMQP1?
Let's see here. Let me try again.
Interesting. I don't know that my server's connecting to the right place. Hang on.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Something odd is going on here. Server config, AMQP1. Said it was connecting to AMQP1. I don't have any other servers running. The broker is now running. Running the server as debug. Server string, AMQP1 SRT game, debug console. AMQP1 SRT game finished initializing. Here's the thing.
Are you on a breakpoint or anything? I'm not seeing a client.
QP1. What's your question? Statement?
Let me make sure I'm connected to AMQP1. Yes, I'm connected to AMQP1. And my client is running, but I don't see my ship.
Yeah, I don't see anything either. And the server's running and connected to AMQP1.
Is the broker that the server and the client are using, is that still okay?
Yep.
There it goes. I was able to connect now.
I see you. Yeah, F1. See me now. So, Roddy, you're the only one.
Yeah, I'm just starting the client again here. I can hear them. No problem now. Yeah, connected okay now.
See.
Oh no, run away.
Oh, somebody's got to die.
Yeah,
Has to
I'm
work.
holding still. Just
Oh, just let me off. Let's slow down. Oh, there goes somebody.
Okay, so that worked for Luke.
Okay, you got me, so I'll let you
and mine,
shoot away.
yeah, and mine gave me the game over screen.
Yeah, mine did too.
It did. Okay.
And I didn't.
So if I try again,
server's still going.
Okay, let's try again here.
Well, I totally hit you. It
This
doesn't like
hitbox
if
is
you,
yanked.
if you like spin while you're doing it. It's like no go.
Uh-oh. Bad location.
Yeah, at some point we need to implement some collision mechanics.
Oh, I got out again.
So
I don't know.
mean, we haven't been able to reproduce that error.
No, so there's definitely a specific
Oh,
combination.
issue processing game event length. Interesting. Hang on, the server's like really pissed right now. Oh, I only got an exception.
Oh, you know what's funny?
What's up?
I can still see. So someone just flew around. I can see you on my game over screen.
Oh,
Yeah, no, that you'll
That's a
see
good thing,
players on the
I think.
game
I
over
like
screen.
that.
So here's an interesting object reference not set to an instance of an object.
so something you used was not valid.
Well, it's going to be the
Oh,
game event UUID or whatever. So this is. Go ahead.
well, so if that's the case, and you didn't have the debugger going last time, so that's a handled exception now, where it wasn't before.
If you say so.
So put like can you put breakpoints on right now?
I mean, it's paused, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's paused on exception.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because if that UUID is the issue, then when it gets to update ship with UUID,
somehow we dequeued a game event that doesn't exist.
yeah.
I don't even understand how that's possible. We literally did DQ, and the next command
And got nothing back.
we got nothing. And at this point in execution, the update count, the length of the queue was greater than 0.
Yeah, so I saw this yesterday in my testing as well. I saw this exact problem. And at the time, my player update count was 63, and yet it vaporized exactly the same way. So, like, there's a number of different, I wouldn't say they're similar,
Mine's 41.
but there's definitely some issues with the object handling and the events and the messages coming in.
Well, but this isn't related to an event. This is like the queue has objects on it. How do you dequeue something that's null?
So either the count is wrong,
How could the count
right?
possibly be wrong?
Or a nil event got put in there. Those are your two
And-
possibilities, right?
I mean, we started getting these like issue processing game event length things at some
Right.
point.
And that preceded this problem, and I saw these as well.
Interestingly, the server's in debug mode, but I didn't get any like debug messages. Just went straight to errors.
So yeah, I mean, unsurprisingly, we've got some bugs to work out. It's not really, I don't find that altogether shocking at this point in the project's development that, these kind of things occur.
I'm just confused also why I'm in debug mode, but I wasn't getting
Because there's
any.
clearly some assumptions we have baked into ourselves that are wrong, right?
Possibly.
Almost certainly.
Oh, is this my client? My bad. This is my client.
Okay.
That's why. I think it was my client that had an exception. Yeah, issue processing game event length. I don't think my server actually ever exploded. No, my server's been happy the whole time. So oddly enough, the server has been happy, but it was my client that was pissed. Can you all check your clients and see if you had any error messages related to that?
I just closed all my stuff down. Let's even put my, yeah, and so mine at the very end was just.
Did you have a length error?
I did not.
That's weird.
It was happily updating away, updating people's positions, drawing the radar. Got to create for a missile. And then after I closed it down, there was a socket exception right at the end, which is fine because I just closed the window out.
Weird.
So one of the things that could happen, right? So if we assume that it's multi-threaded, which we've proved is true because we looked at all the thread pools and there's workers working. So while I'm not intimately familiar with how all the threads are being utilized, we know that it is multi-threaded. And so after we've executed player create queue.count, we could be paused before the next statement, which is player create queue dequeue. So between checking the count,
but shouldn't those things happen in the same thread? Or are you saying that something else in a different thread?
Right. It could have been interrupted and another thread could have run in between. And the thread running in between actually added or took all the stuff out before we got a chance to DQ here, right? Like, I mean,
yeah. So if yes, possibly. If that's the case, though, I'm concerned because it's like, does every method that get called happen in its own thread?
Don't know. I don't know how the threading model is set up, right? Like, there's clearly a bunch of thread pools, and we saw that one thread pool was active with a thread that did like everything from when the message was received right up to where we had the breakpoint, and we knew that the stack was like pretty long, so there's a bunch of stuff going on, and then we also know there's a bunch of thread pools waiting. So I'd probably need to know more about how Godot or /mono is handling the threads,
C
right? C#, yeah, exactly. But like that explanation makes sense because we have a case where, hey, look, the count is 63. And then the next step we DQ and get nothing. So either the count at that point was 0 or there was a nil.
But that's that method. I got to sort of end the show. But that method is the only thing that DQs anything on that queue.
Gotcha. So that's interesting. So it looks like we're going away with some homework.
Potentially, yeah. This is where we have to do more scale testing, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we only saw a little bit right here, but like yesterday I had it up and running with 10 server-side clients. I had it up and running with 10 clients before there was really any problems that occurred. But like the problems that I saw this problem once, I didn't see the AMQP exception, but like they're the same problems we're seeing, which could mean that, there's just a small number of things here that we need to understand better and resolve. And like, I didn't see any performance problems. I looked at the broker and I configured a local broker for no persistence, no durable messages. And I saw you had a 250 TTL in one of the cases for the messages.
Yeah, that was because that was the reason for that TTL is different, but still valid.
And so I saw, looking in the broker in the console, I saw that all messages were being sent and received at all times by all clients. And I used all the clients here on my own machine, and they all operated properly. So like in the best case scenario, like in the local machine going down and up the TCP stack, like other than these bugs, it all worked kind of as designed, right? We're able to connect a bunch of clients, either from the server side or the client side. We're able to see it all happening on the broker. We can inspect the data on the broker to see how it was working. And it was just that there's some bugs that we need to resolve before we can really see like how far out can we go, or then alternatively, how far away can you put the broker before latency becomes a problem and your performance goes down because it's like TCP instead of UDP. So now like we're getting to the point now where we can try to see where some of the bounds are.
Yeah, I'm just confused about this game event length problem that I was seeing because none of you saw it, which is really bizarre.
Not today, no. I saw it.
And I did check my logs, and I didn't see any.
Right, so I don't understand how my client could be thinking that it's getting issues with the messages when you're all receiving the same messages.
But if we make the assumption that there's threading involved, then absolutely it could be true, because the speed and performance on your machine is going to be different than the speed and performance on my machine.
The message was a binary blob that was received as a whole unit from the server and deserialized and immediately processed. So how is it possible that the same messages that you're receiving in the same exact way were not processed correctly on my end?
It depends on the state of your process that's processing the messages, I would argue, which obviously is different than ours. Because if not, we all would have crashed at exactly the same time.
But I didn't.
In which case,
I'm not talking about. This wasn't a crash. This is literally like the game event comes in and my client was saying error and your clients weren't saying that.
That's right. So it wasn't.
But we all received the same messages.
Right. So it's not the messages. It's something else.
You didn't.
Right. And so this could be.
You didn't get blown up during that round, did you?
I don't recall. I don't believe so.
I know I did. At least once.
Right.
I wonder if that. I mean, that may be a place to look, I guess.
It could be, right? Because there's a discrepancy that we're missing somewhere, and that's a good place to start as any.
Yeah.
I somehow feel like you guys have changed the subject on me from my unanswered question about.
We're wondering what could influence the behavior, because we can see that there's a discrepancy because you saw one thing and we didn't.
Right.
So there's a discrepancy, but we can't put our finger on the reason why that discrepancy exists.
I mean, essentially, the reason I brought that up is because if you're talking about array, like some length, your client saw a different set of other clients than ours did because we died, essentially. Like it would have to reset, right? It would have to grab the new field.
The way you're talking makes it sound like you have a fundamental misunderstanding of how the AMQP broker messagey stuff is working.
No, I'm talking on the Godot side, because that, like the link thing to me, I'm throwing stuff at the wall.
And that this brings me back to you've changed the subject away from how did we process the same messages in our clients, and you didn't get errors and I got errors. Well, and now you're back to talking about.
I guess that's what I'm saying is our clients processed different messages because we were out for a certain amount of time.
They processed the same messages. Nobody ever disconnected.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I guess because we didn't crash, I guess, on that one. So
We quit and restarted, right?
I-
Within
No, you
the
didn't even
same
quit.
game
You
loop.
didn't even
Yeah.
quit and restart. You got destroyed.
Oh, and
So you
we
never disconnected from the broker.
no, that's right. But what I'm saying from a ship point of view, the ship disappeared, and then we joined again, right?
Right. But none of that is related to the server sending game event messages, which
Right.
which only my client somehow interpreted as
No,
being
what
the
we're
wrong
saying,
length.
right? But obviously, the state in your client is different than the state in our client overall, and if not, they would have to be perfectly deterministic clients, right?
But I
If
don't.
we were going to have in sync clients.
Yeah, this
at all
is like
times.
we're going in a circle here. Like
It requires more
the
investigation, I think, is the ultimate conclusion.
yeah, but it also brings us back to like we probably need to involve the people that wrote the
I don't think that's
library.
true yet.
yeah, I
Not from
honestly,
my point
I
of
guess
view.
I don't feel confident
Well,
that
so
it's
we've
an
got
problem.
one case where the
That's right.
client throws an exception, literally like C# says this client has thrown this exception, this library has thrown this exception. And then I've got a case where the same library that's behaving odd in one example, or at least that we're getting an error from, is now saying that the same exact binary blob message that you two got, I got, but it decided that it didn't like it. And so you're saying we need to do more investigation, and I'm saying why wouldn't we want to involve the people that have this
Because I don't
library
think it's
that's
been
doing all this
proven
weird stuff?
that it's the library's fault yet.
Yeah.
And most of the time, this is my 7th year as a messaging engineer here, and I was 2 years at FuSource. And the majority of the times we investigate customer problems, it turns out to be the customer's problem.
Right, but
Right?
in the process of doing so, don't you end up finding the problem?
Yeah, but it's normally not one that the library creator has created. It's normally one that the
Right,
user of the
but
library
that's
has created.
you're sort of proving the point. It's like, hey, like your library is doing something that we don't understand. They will probably far more quickly than us be able to say, here's why it's doing that, because you did XYZ.
That depends.
They're gonna
It depends
say
on the time they have to invest in understanding our code,
it's yeah. I was
which
gonna
may
say
or may
that's
not be as much as the time we have to invest in our code.
It's going to be marked as not reproducible.
Yes, and closed.
Well, so I mean, so then what are your thoughts on how we can potentially troubleshoot this further?
Run multiple clients, debug what goes on, and
Yeah, but
understand
okay,
better
like
the.
that's very generic. I mean, I can run lots of clients,
I
and we
think,
just did
I think
debug them.
generally
Like,
speaking, the source is around the removal. Like we can target that specific.
That's right, exactly.
Because
and we don't
but
do
I
a try
also,
catch or anything there. So if there's an exception, it just gets tossed into the ethers.
well, and so now we're back to a question that I asked earlier, which is try catch what where.
Try catch every exception around remove player.
But try so again. You said try catch every exception.
Yep.
What's throwing the exception for us to try catch?
So in that thing there's 2 separate problems we have, right? There's 2 separate behaviors that were incorrect. There was the one where we had this weird AMQP exception,
right?
And then we had like the string of the exception being printed out that had nothing to do with AMQP exception, which to me says AMQP exception caught and printed something that was generated elsewhere, and it started in remove player. I think that was the case there, right?
It started in send game.
It's send in game update, right? So we need to evaluate what goes on there to understand better how we get to the point where AMQP exception.
So legitimately just like wrap every internal reference to every internal everything.
Have you never done any printf debugging in your life?
I've done plenty of printf type debugging, but
exception debugging is not that much different, unfortunately, right?
Like, well, we'll give it a try.
Console log. That's my web debug. Console log.
And there was a developer I really respect here who used to be on my team, and he really just like after 10 years of working as a principal software engineer on messaging stuff, he really came to the point where he was like, sometimes the debugger is just the amount of effort sometimes to get it up and running, get it where you need to, evaluate things. It's like, I could have gotten there a lot faster with printf debugging. And sometimes that's really true.
So it looks like I can run more than one client locally just with like and to background it.
Yeah, or just run
So-
multiple terminal windows and just like use the -D-V flags when you run your Godot executable that's been built, and it'll just dump all your stuff to the console. And I just kept creating terminal tabs and
Yeah,
starting new clients.
This will give me a chance to pretend to be able to do load testing stuff.
Yes.
I'll try to see if I can like automate loading and doing things.
Cool. All right, everyone. Well, that was an awkward, as they typically are. It's like, hey, we do all this cool stuff, and then we get to this like weird, like,
Something is broken.
what are we gonna do?
We ended on a whoosh.
Yes.
Boom. All right, everyone. Have a great one.
folks.
We'll see you next month, hopefully. Cheers. Bye-bye.